Hello, welcome to Thrive Together, a mental wellness series across diverse journeys. Today's topic is inspired wellness, nurturing the creative soul. My name is Megan Hunter, and I will be your facilitator speaker for today. This session originally aired on Wednesday, February 7th, 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Quebec time, and was brought to you by Yes, Employment and Entrepreneurship. Of course, with the generous and amazing support of our sponsors, CHSSN and the Public Health Agency of Canada. Without you, we would not have been able to make this possible. And to spread and share information on mental well-being and mental wellness is such a gift for all of us, truly. So thank you very much for making this possible. And before we begin, or as we'd like to begin, we would like to share and acknowledge that we're gathered on the traditional territory of the Kananki and the To'akahi, or Montreal. This place has long served as a site of meeting and exchange amongst First Nations. We recognize and respect the traditional custodians of the land before it looked like it did today, has settled. We're meeting here, and we recognize that this is also a place that continues to be a place of cultural exchange, gathering, and stewardship for Indigenous communities. I would also like to acknowledge I'm coming to you today from Treaty 7 territory, which is in southern Alberta. In true spirit of reconciliation, we recognize that a land acknowledgement is just the beginning of the journey to reconciliation. Acknowledging the land that we are on is part of the learning and unlearning that needs to be done in order for us to have a more united Canada, and a Canada that truly sees its roots and the people who have cared for the land long before it was settled. So when we did this group live, this group session live, we had a group agreement on psychological safety. And I think there are some pieces of this that extend to you listening to the recording. And the first might be obvious, but sometimes it's not. So I might share it with you. Take care of yourself. You're number one. You're the most important person in this room. Take the time to just be nurtured with information. Go for a walk. Cuddle in with your pet cat or your bunny or your dog. Have some water, have a snack, do a stretch, do some of the things that we don't usually feel like we have time for. Allow yourself to be inspired for once, instead of feeling like you need to be the inspired person doing all of the things. Just know that you're welcome here. Your experience is true. The experience of those around you is true to them, and you're all welcome here. So with that in mind, let's continue. We are here today to recognize the specific struggles of being an artist in Quebec in the COVID-19 era, and to explore ways to recover so you can create. And we could put a caveat in that. You're also Anglophone artists in Quebec in the COVID-19 era. That's a lot to carry. So just keep that in mind for a moment. How we're going to address this, how we're going to address caring for the creative soul, is by doing a few introductions, talk about what it's like to be an Anglophone artist in Quebec, explore what mental well-being for artists is, some of the barriers you face. And then we'll turn into how to nurture your creative soul. We start with order of care. If you've been to any of the other sessions, you know we talk about this. It's one of our foundational pieces, and it's worth a repeat because every time we hear it, we learn something new. We'll talk about rest differently than in the entrepreneurship session, inspiration, thoughts, and feelings, and then how to keep the journey going. All right, a little introduction. I'm Megan. And if you were here live, I asked you to introduce yourself in the chat, but I encourage you to introduce yourself to another artist in Quebec who identifies as an Anglophone, or English is their most comfortable second, third, or fourth language that they speak, and connect with someone. In artist land, I guess my background is more of a self-taught nature. I am in in my big kid life, I work in health promotion, public health lens, mostly I got my start in the education sector and then moved into more the municipality sector of health promotion. But I've found that being creative has been the piece of my work that keeps me most inspired and also keeps me most engaged with what I do. Figuring out palettes of a presentation or a theme or jokes or stories to tell, they really inspire me to keep going. Um, my colleague at Yes Montreal would also remind me to share that I have authored a chapter in a textbook on um, taking care. It's called Teacher Take Care. I highly recommend it. It's a beautiful book, has a lovely Indigenous lens. I've also illustrated two children's books along with my mentor and friend Jennifer Carson, and that is the Misty River Valley Fairies book series. So that's also something you could look into as well if you'd like. So I do come to you as an artist, and there is a part of my entrepreneurship that is art, and I understand some of the struggle that comes with that and the joy that comes with that too. So today I wanted to pay tribute to how art played such a huge role in our lives in COVID. When all else was unavailable to us, we read, we watched, we created. Art gave us hope. It provided that piece that connected us. You'll see this shirt here in the corner. We're all in this together. This was an artist here in Alberta. That's Dr. Dina Hinshaw, who was our chief, our public health minister at the time in Alberta. I had this T-shirt. My partner had this T-shirt. People were wearing it all over the place. When you were on Zoom, you saw people with this T-shirt. It was interesting to see how art spoke to the time that we were in. And I love some of what I've pulled up here, people in masks, looking at ideas of equity, gender, roles, arts, how art really infused itself into the COVID experience. It was there and it's still there. And there's still pieces of COVID that we find everywhere because of the art that lives on. And I think we'll continue to see an evolution of that as we go. But art creates a togetherness despite our differences. If you're here in person, we did a this or that because the creative soul, my goodness, we all get inspiration from different places. So if you would like to engage in the this or that, feel free to pause, do your this and that here. What I loved about the group live is that some people decided that they were going to choose both or neither and made up their own. And I love that because it encapsulates what um, inspiration and creativity really is that we don't have to follow a script. It doesn't have to look like this or that. It could be or something completely different, which is quite beautiful. So feel free to engage in that activity as you will. And a thinking activity that really sets the stage and the tone for what we're doing today is, what does it mean to be an English speaking artist in Quebec? What does that mean to you? What does it bring up? Are there challenges that you face? Are there things that are a lot harder than they could be? Are there things that are easier than they could be because of the thriving artist community in Quebec? I'd love for you to take a moment to really reflect on your own experience here. What does it mean to be an artist in Quebec, an Anglophone artist in Quebec? What comes along with that for you? So feel free to pause the recording and come back once you've had a moment to reflect. And if you've decided to stick around with me, you will just go right into the cartoon. And I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with the Awkward Yeti, but the Awkward Yeti is something that definitely got me through the pandemic. Just a bit of humor really went a long way. So I think it's funny, especially as creatives, where we think the longer we sit and do the thing that we need to do, whether it's on our computer or painting or writing or crafting or creating a sculpture, performing, we think that the longer we do it, the more we do it, the better it'll be. And I think what we're learning is that we do need rest, and our mental health does take a toll if we don't work to fills that battery. So we see here the brain is really challenging itself here to get the thing done, to really focus. And you can see the mental health battery just draining. And the heart finally notices and says, hey, get up, let's go for a walk, let's replenish you. And you can see the mental health bar just refilling. If only it were that easy. But I also think there's a beautiful lesson in here that we do need to care for our mental health, especially as artists. So mental health, mental well-being. I think it's important to define what that means to us before moving forward here. So mental health, I took this beautiful definition from one of our funders, the Public Health Agency of Canada, also a authority that I've respected my entire career, and they do not steer me wrong. So I definitely appreciate this one. So the Public Health Agency of Canada, or the agency as they are called, defines mental health as the capacity of each of us to feel, think, and act in ways that enhance our ability to enjoy life and deal with the challenges we face. It's a positive sense of emotional and spiritual well-being that respects the importance of culture, equity, social justice, interconnections, and personal dignity. There's a lot to unpack in that, isn't there? And as artists, I'm sure you look in there and you're like, yeah, my mental health does affect the art that I make. Being in connection with our feelings can be the difference between our art making sense to ourselves and the world and maybe not. How our art allows us to enjoy life and deal with challenges, how art brought us through the challenge of COVID or supported us and kept us comfortable during COVID. I also love how it talks about the emotional and spiritual well-being and pieces like culture, equity, social justice, interconnections, and personal dignity, and the role that each one of these concepts plays in how we experience the world day to day. So keeping this definition in mind, let's reflect for a second. Our mental health is, first of all, mental health is something each one of us has. Just like we have a body and we have physical health, we have a brain, we have emotions, we have chemicals and hormones, and we have mental health. So it's just something that comes with being human. Mental illness, on the other hand, is something different. Just like we can get physical illnesses, we can get mental illnesses. Some of them are permanent, some of them are temporary, some of them can heal, some can be managed, some are chronic, some are acute. And if we start to look at physical and mental health from a lens of sort of like physical health in that way, it helps us take the sting out of it. It's part of being human. It comes with the package. So we can have a thriving mental health, even if we have a mental illness. We can have languishing mental health, even if we don't have a mental illness. So they're two completely different concepts. Our mental health can flourish and thrive, or it can be languishing, depending on anything that's happening. And whether or not we have a mental illness can play into our mental health, but it also may not. So you're probably looking at the slide thinking, wow, is my mental health languishing? Noticing that there are a couple of different ways that we can notice this. There's emotional signs, psychological signs, and social signs as well. Emotional signs is if we feel like we're missing the joy, excitement, and passion in life. And I don't just mean in like the moody, I'm an artist way. It's hard to shower. It's hard to get out of bed. I don't want to do anything. We feel like we're bored all the time. We don't really care about the future. We feel like life is missing something. These can all be emotional signs of a languishing mental health. Psychological signs, we're feeling like we don't really have room to grow. Maybe we're disappointed in something in ourselves that may or may not be true, first of all. The challenges of life are just piling up and it's hard to get to them all and to solve them all. Or a lack of really strong options. We can't see the next opportunity. Sometimes that's exciting and sometimes it's really hard. Social signs. This is really when we start to see a change in how we can get close to others or not, when we're feeling connected or not. And what is the point of your work? Do you feel like it has a place in society? And you should, because your art matters and it's important. Or have you taken on a fierce independence where I don't need anyone, I do everything by myself, I can do it all? These can all be and likely are signs that we may be languishing in our mental health. And remembering that this can change day to day, moment to moment, situation to situation, and it could be a mix of any of this. We don't do this to scare you. It's more to understand when we need to stop and think, whoa, maybe I need to address keeping myself happy, refilling my cup, replenishing my mental health, instead of further going down a spiral when we're not feeling great. Because it's about your mind, it's about your motivation, it's about your clarity of thought. And I want you to take a moment to reflect, knowing what we know now about the definition of mental health and how expansive it is, and also some of the signs that it might be, languishing. What are some of the challenges you face as an artist? Do you have a signature stress that comes up for yourself? I'm just going to flip back to the other slide. For me, it's when I start moving into this fierce independence zone that I know that my mental health is languishing, where I feel like I can't rely on anyone. No one's going to do it right. I need to do it all myself. It's only me. That's when I know my mental health is languishing, and it comes up especially in my art, which is an odd thing. Whereas I may not have as many emotional signs of mental health languishing when I think about my art. It fills my cup in a different way, but it's also not my only stream of entrepreneurship. So that's also something to keep in mind when you think of these signs for yourself. So take a moment to pause the recording and reflect on the challenges that you face as an artist in terms of your own mental well being. Are there things that come up regularly? Are there flags? Is there something that you'd like to address that might make things easier for you? Take a moment to pause, and we'll see you in a moment. All right, welcome back. For those of you who did not pause, thank you for sticking around. Thank you for pausing for those who did. We're going to move into the part of how do I maintain positive mental health and how to nurture your creative soul. So, we spent the first time of our time together really digging into what might be coming up for us. I like to say we need to know what the beast looks like, what the problem looks like, what we're working with before we can look to quote unquote solve it or address it. Um, there's some there's some wisdom that says often the solution is in the problem. It's hard to solve something that we don't know what we're solving for. I always found those particular math problems where you had to solve something backwards. Found those very difficult because I didn't know what I was working with. It was so much easier to know what I was working with when I had all the numbers, but we don't always have all the numbers. So I guess say la vie, right? All right. So how we maintain our positive mental health and nurture our soul starts with a concept that, again, if you've been with us for the other 3 series, you've heard this, but that's okay. You can hear it again. I learn something new every time I hear this, every time I present it, and it's been it's been a lot that I've shared this concept with others. So Dr. Liu is a professor at the University of Alberta School of Public Health. He is also an emergency room doctor at the Royal Alec in Edmonton, Alberta. One of the questions he asks his patients when they come to him at the emergency is, do you have a place to go home to after this? And if they say no, he does everything within his power to find them a home to go to. When I tell that story, it kind of makes me want to cry. First of all, because of what we know is happening in our world today, but also to think that there's a doctor who sees that a lot of our mental well-being and a lot of our belonging starts with just having a place to hang our hat. Um, he's set up a program up in Edmonton that provides housing and food for people who are unhoused in Edmonton within his ability. And they have a pilot project going up there. He actually just won an award through the government of Canada for his service. So definitely look him up, drliu.ca, Dr. Louis Francis Cuddy. His work's really inspiring. And this is a man who saves lives for a living. And he told a group of us in his leadership class that we had 3 responsibilities in life and they had to go in this order, otherwise they don't work. And that's yourself, your family and friends, and your art or your work. He said your work will never thrive if you're not taking care of yourself and if you feel like your inner circle or your family friends are not well. We will always be distracted. Sometimes in terms of art, our art comes out of the strife and out of the struggle, but we also need to be in a certain mindset for that to happen. And some of you might be thinking, Megan, what comes first? This feels like a chicken and an egg situation. And I think what I liked about Dr. Lu's advice here is it gave us a place to start. Start with yourself. Get rest, sleep, food, water, movement, social activity, faith, or some sort of spirituality that connects you with the world, something bigger than yourself. And then connect and support your friends. Be supported and connected with your friends as well. It goes both ways. And your work, when we care for ourselves, when we care for the people around us, we're going to have the space and the preparedness to allow our creativity to flourish. I don't know about you, but I don't do very well when I'm hungry or thirsty. And so that's the simplest way to think about. We need to fuel ourselves in order to fuel what we do and what we're passionate about. I also like to challenge people to prove Dr. Lu wrong. Don't care for yourself and see what happens. No, actually, that's not the message I want you to have. I want you to care for yourself and see what happens. But if you have a different way of looking at this model, I am really actually quite open to hearing about it. I do believe in this model a lot when we use it, but always open for new and creative ways of seeing the world and different applications of thought. So one really important way that we can care for ourselves is through rest, and creative rest is really important. How many of you tend to get your best ideas on a walk or in the shower or just before you're going to bed? Because that's definitely me. And I'm sure I'm not alone there. It's when I've given myself the space for my ideas to come through, to join the party, is when they show up. And creative rest is very important for us because our brain cannot be forced to be creative. It's like sitting there and having someone go, come up with a good idea, come up with a good idea. That is not going to be helpful to us at all. I have found that the rest and the space that I give myself allows me to have more creativity. I don't know what that's like for you. I'm sure you all have different ways that you find inspiration. But we are really prone to burnout when it comes to being an artist. And a burnout is when our energy and our attention and our creativity just feels like it's not there. So I have a little YouTube video I'd like to share with you. There are a lot of flashing lights. I don't want this one to stress you out, but it might. So just a little trigger warning there. You will get the link to this if you want to watch the whole thing, but I'm going to start with the beginning of the video, just so you can see or have a glimpse of how we can look at our rest as artists in a different and new way that really helps us with being our best and being rested enough to do the work that we need to do. All right, so just hang tight and we'll play the first little bit of the video.
We all get burnout, and I think it's because society rewards people being overworked and constantly pushing ourselves to the edge. Sometimes you're in this feeling of burnout and you don't even really know it until you take time to sit back and reflect. For me, burnout kind of feels like this state of I don't really have any more ideas, or tasks that I normally do, no problem, are a lot harder or stressful, and just a kind of general fog over my mind throughout the workday. For me, I found the main cause of burnout is not treating my rest and downtime with enough respect and constantly pushing myself to the edge for some short-term gains, but damaging myself in the long term. The mindset shift I've been trying to get into to kind of battle these ideas of burnout is to not just look at rest as the absence of work, but something that's equally as important in the creative process and something that should be valued just as much as the work itself. I've talked about it before, and ever since I read this book, Rest, it was very inspiring to me and kind of helped me want to promote a more healthy lifestyle and not constantly push myself and get stuck in that kind kind of capitalist grind that we all have fallen victim to at one point. A quote I really liked from the book was, "You have to resist the lure of busyness, make time for rest, take it serious, and protect it from a world that is intent on stealing it." The way I kind of look at that is whatever short-term benefits you get from overworking yourself are way offset by the long-term costs that can result in damage to your creative process or yourself as a designer, like errors, loss of productivity, and worst of all, even quitting your career. We're so connected nowadays with our phones and social media, TikTok, iMessage, all that stuff. It seems like rest and recovery is harder and harder to come by, especially if you're stressed out by a client project and they can email you at any moment when you're just sitting on the couch on your phone. So in this video, I want to reflect on some of my experience with burnout and some overall tips on how you can be a more sustainable and healthy creative. At the end of the day, we all have to work, right? So the first thing I found that has been very important and healthy and kind of keeping a sustainable workflow is this idea of 4 hours of work. I know I've talked about this before. I first came across it in the book Deep Work by Cal Newport, which I also highly recommend. Honestly, this idea of 4 hours of work I think is very valuable, and the 8-hour workday isn't really sustainable. Most people I know, including myself, when I worked in an office, there wasn't usually 8 hours of work being done. That's just how long you had to be there. And I've noticed that my productivity takes a hard drop off after about 4 hours. I think especially as designers and other creative fields, this idea that our output should be measured by the amount of hours we're doing is wrong. The amount of time you're working doesn't directly affect what you're getting done or how quality the thing is that you're doing. And you know, sometimes that 4 hours of work that day can just be ideation or concepting or creative stuff. The most difficult thing with putting yourself to that rigid hourly schedule is that sometimes creative work isn't just the production part. The stuff that goes into it before, like gathering inspiration, coming up with ideas, is just as important, and it shouldn't be held to a different standard as other types of work. When I discovered this idea of working 4 hours and I try to implement that for my main work for the day, it's been very monumental for my productivity and my overall mental health. The nicest thing about this strategy is if you're efficient and you minimize distractions, you can get the amount of work you need done in that 4 hours you otherwise would in an 8-hour workday as an employee. The important part though, like I said, is minimizing distractions. This 4 hours of work isn't the same amount of work that you'd be doing in 8 hours. You need to channel your energy and your focus and really get into that deep work during those times. The simple way I've been able to manage this is putting my phone on Do Not Disturb, closing out emails or any other distracting things that would happen, especially as us designers, we're working on the computer a lot and there's a lot of things that can pop up and distract you. This idea of just answering something real quick or maybe doing an email or doing something just to get out of the way while you're working can be more detrimental than you think, because it leaves this kind of residue on your brain. And even if, you know, you're still trying to get back into your work or your flow state, you may be thinking in the back of your mind about that other thing you have to deal with in a few minutes. I know 4 hours may not sound like enough to most people, especially if you're used to a normal schedule, but if you can get your deep work done in this 4-hour chunk, I promise you it'll pay off. If you're more efficient with your workday and you get all you need to do done, this helps minimize burnout and allows yourself more time to enjoy stuff outside of working.
There we have it. I know that there's a lot of other tips that Jesse Neinberg will let us know about. However, I figured we'll just do the first one, that 4 hours of deep work. I think there's a lot of wisdom in just allowing yourself a bit of space to do the work that you want to do.
And just going to make sure you can still hear me. Just provide a thumbs up or something in the chat. Okay, wonderful. My microphone's still working. My little ear pod just died. Sorry about that, friends. So no problem. I think there's a lot of wisdom in providing yourself space and time and almost a containment creativity box without it being too contained, I suppose. Anyhow, a lot of wisdom in how to prevent burnout by making sure that rest is built in, and also really bringing in your creative time to create sacred space to get the creative work done. So I thought, talking about it, thinking of this concept that Jesse gave us and also this order of care, this is another place that we can pause, if you would so like, to reflect on how some of this advice might be different from advice you've had in the past, or the way that you're working currently, or maybe it's the same as you're working currently. But I'd like you to just reflect on ways that order of care and using your time differently and prioritizing rest can support being inspired. Wonderful. So I'll put that other slide back up. You can pause if you'd like to do that reflection. Otherwise, just, come along for the rest of the ride and maybe think about it as you go. All right, for those of you who have paused, welcome back. If you've stuck with us, we're looking at how to be inspired. This slide is very loud and I love it. It makes me so happy. Being inspired. I wish there was one road to being inspired. Something I've really connected with when it comes to my own practice is actually this very old practice. It's a Japanese term called Ikigai. And Aiki means to live, and Gai means to reason. So together, it means your reason to live. And it's a concept that encourages people to discover what truly matters to them and to live life filled with purpose and joy. So the resource for this was taken from Fingerprints of Success. This resource can also be found in the pamphlet. However, let's take a look at what this means. How would we break something like this down to allow ourselves the purpose that drives inspiration? So the idea here is that there's 4 circles that intersect, as you can see, in a couple of ways. And then in the center is your Ikigai, or your reason to live. But your circles are what you love, what the world needs, what you're good at, and what you can get paid for. They're very different concepts, right? Sometimes what we love, we're not really good at. If we love something and we're good at it, they call it a passion. So for myself, that's health promotion. I love health promotion. And surprisingly, I guess I do it. It also bleeds into something I can get paid for, which is nice. So it becomes a passion, a profession, and I think gets me closer to my reason, my Ikigai. I also love to sing. I might not be great at singing, so it just gets to live in that what you love. I might not be the artist I think I am, so that could live in what I love. What am I good at? I was a gymnast. I don't know if I loved it. I don't know if I can get paid for it, so I may just stay in what I'm good at. But something else, what I'm good at and what I could get paid for, facilitation. I do love facilitation. It is fun to do, but I would say more the concepts and really getting to know and work with concepts is more my passion. So that's where a profession would come in. So you're good at it, you can get paid for it. It's a skill, it's a hireable skill. It goes towards your Ikigai, but it might not have all of the things. Does the world need it? Is that other piece? So if we're using, for example, health promotion, for me, I love it. I think I'm okay at it. I can get paid for it. And I do believe the world needs it right now. So for me, that is my Ikigai. And I say it really quick right now, but it took me years, decades to really, truly figure this out. So I think a way to break it down so this feels a little bit more manageable is to start by filling out the circles and not worrying about them overlapping yet. So take the what you love and list all of the what you loves. Take what the world needs and list all of the what the world needs that refers to you. You don't have, the world needs a lot of stuff. So it doesn't have to be an exhaustive list. It's your list. What you can get paid for and what you're good at. You want to think of those separately and then start looking at where they overlap. Oh, I'm really good at murals. Oh, I really love doing them. I can get paid for them. And you know what? It's big right now in cities to have murals on a wall. Wow, maybe that's a purpose that I can work with. Realizing that there are different types of purpose, and your one purpose in life might not be painting murals. It could contribute to a greater purpose. Your greater purpose is more than just what you do. It's why you do it. It's how you do it. It's your inspiration, your motivation. But we get there. We get there by starting with the little tasks that we love to do and then seeing where they intersect and bringing them together. There's also some really great instructions on the fingerprintsforsuccess.com, but this activity truly changed my life in the way that it helped me align my purpose and my skill set and what I like to do. And it really gave a lot of purpose to the work that I go about in my daily life. So I definitely like to put that forward to you as something to do to support your inspiration. Inspired. Also with inspired, so you've got your Ikigai, is also reading books, listening to others speak about their creative journey. I love Big Magic. I listened to Elizabeth Gilbert read it to me on an audiobook, and it changed the way that I relied on my art and probably made my art more free and more open to support me than what the way I was relying on my art in other ways. So I recommend this book to really any creative. It's a way to protect the gift that is your inspiration and the gift that is your creativity. And also supports us in how do we look at fear? What is fear? What does it do to in our lives? What role does it play? How do we work with it instead of trying to keep it at bay and then letting it come in and mess everything up? So I loved the approaches of that too. So just an idea. So we talk a lot about how our emotions, thoughts, and actions, our thoughts and feelings drive what we do and how we feel about ourselves, our work, and our lives. Um, in cognitive behavioral therapy, they have a thoughts, emotions, and action triangle, which we look at in the entrepreneur session if you want to learn more about it. But for our session today, we're going to look at the internal family systems approach. So there's so many different types of therapy and psychology out there. There's many different approaches. And one approach is called the internal family systems therapy approach. Now, if you're looking at IFS as they call it, they look at a core self-evaluation. So looking at yourself from a vision of having there's quite a few more C's. I think there's 8 C's and 5 P's of core self. So when we're in our core self, and what I mean by core self is that we are aligned, we feel compassion, curiosity, clarity, calmness, connectedness, confidence, courage, creativity. We feel that when we are truly connected to ourselves. And how we become connected to ourselves is through presence, perspective, patience, playfulness, and persistence. So, if you're looking for a type of therapy that might really resonate with you as a creative, I recommend looking into some of the work of internal family systems to understand how to be in your sense of core self so that you can access your creativity, your playfulness, the persistence, the perspective, the patience that is required to create art. And those links will also be available on your brochure too. So a question that I get a lot as a mental health advocate and health promoter is, when do I seek professional help? Well, my recommendation, health promotion is about prevention, injury prevention, and preventing the injury in the first place. I recommend finding a mental health support or mental health professional before you need it, so that you have a built relationship with somebody. That could be somebody at, say, Yes Entrepreneur. Not that they're not mental health specialists, but they are coaches. They coach artists. They help artists connect to community. Getting in with that can be really, really helpful to support your journey and alleviate some of the loneliness that comes with art. But also when it comes to our mental health and having a mental health professional, having someone who you know and trust and have spoken to a few times before things get kind of hard can help make it easier to access help. Remember back in the beginning where I told you my mental health is languishing when I feel myself trying to be too independent? That's when I need to reach out the most. When I see myself looking out into the world being like, I can't trust anyone, no one can do the work the way I can, that's when I need the help the most. So I need to remind myself, I was never meant to take on life alone. I'm going to reach out for some support. And sometimes that's a mental health professional. Sometimes it's going to, say, an artist coach or a community of practice where people are there to support you and be with you. And yes, on employment and entrepreneurship really provides some beautiful services for that. So please know you're not alone in this space, and take that into consideration when you think about how you care for yourself and your art. So speaking of which, speaking of Yes Employment and Entrepreneurship, keep in touch. info@yesmontreal.ca and their website www.yesmontreal.ca. They're there for you. That's their whole purpose of existing, is to support you to thrive. So dig into that. Know that it's there to help and will make you and your art better. I just want to thank you so much for being here today, taking the time to explore different ways that you can foster creativity and be inspired, but also protect your mental well being in the process of bringing the beautiful perspective that you have to the world. So, this could not have been possible without the support of the CHSSN or the Public Health Agency of Canada. We thank them so much for their sponsorship and contributions to make this possible. And you, friends, thank you for what you do. Thank you for what you bring to the world. We know that there's a lot that goes into being an artist, and a lot that's unseen before a final product is ever released. So keep doing that beautiful thing you do to make the world a more connected, inspired, creative, and special place. And we hope to see you in the Yes Montreal community if you're not already there. All right. So you take care, and we'll check in again soon.